Welcome to yet another episode of the NewSpace India podcast. Have you ever wondered why we don't have movies like Star Wars or Star Trek, or even of late movies like Martian or Gravity with an Indian setting and an Indian theme, or even science fiction authors picking up space-based themes and writing a series that revolves around space-based science fiction? In this episode of the NewSpace India podcast, I have Ajay, who is a software engineer turned writer, director, and producer, who's putting out a space-themed science fiction movie called Mysore Masala, which is set to release this year. In this episode of the NewSpace India podcast, Ajay and I chat about why space finds itself as such an unexplored niche in movie making in India, and how that can be changed and is set to change in the upcoming years. Hi, Ajay. Welcome to this episode of the NewSpace India podcast. Thank you so much for taking your time out on a weekend to speaking with me.
Thank you, Narayan. I'm excited to talk about this.
Firstly, I would like to begin with a little bit of your background because traditionally, I think on this show we've had guests who are either space scientists or space lawyers and entrepreneurs. And you're doing something very fascinating, and I find your work very interesting and very apt during this time. So tell us a little bit about your background and what you do.
I grew up in Bangalore, and I went to an engineering school there, and I came to the United States and got a master's degree in engineering. And I really always was interested in aerospace and airplanes and stuff like that. But I think at that time when I came in, I came in on a master's degree in mechanical engineering, but I wanted to shift to aerospace engineering. And I went to school at the University of Arizona in Tucson. So I went to that department and tried looking, trying to strike conversation. And I found out that it's very hard for immigrants to get into aerospace because of the visa constraints, and it was heavily related to the defense sector at that time in the United States. So that was kind of unfortunate or fortunate, I don't know. So I continued with my degree in engineering, and I think my fascination for technology and space started very early, and I've been in the technology field for the last 15 years. And with innovation strategy in the kind of government IT space, and with security systems and a lot of things. I think all those varied interests and my affinity for the arts, for visual medium, all kind of came together after, say, 15 years. And me hitting 40, I think the midlife crisis, as I say, everything has kind of come together. So I think that helped me kind of rethink where I was going, what I wanted to do. And I quit my job about 3 years ago and started this media company in Bangalore to make sci-fi films. And I think that's where I am right now.
Yeah, that is quite fascinating as a journey, and also I think kudos to you for taking such a leap, in the middle of your career. So why sci-fi, and how did you get started? Was it something that you always wanted to do?
Or when you say sci-fi, I'm not creating a spacefaring adventure such as Star Trek or Star Wars, but the story does look up and wonder about the universe. Like they say, the universe is always expanding, and we have evidence of it. But you always wonder, what the hell is it expanding inside of, right? and is it going to hit a wall after expanding to such an extent? Is there a wall? So I think we all have been asking these questions, and humans have been asking these questions since the start of their existence. And as far as me, I've also pondered the same questions. And it's hard not to wonder about the purpose of our existence. Is there an answer out there, and things like that. So also, I think humans are explorers by nature, and we've had fantastic novels and films created over time. That amazes you and deepens your need for answers and exploration and all that stuff. So I think it stems from my interest in space stems from that perspective, from the wonderment of space and exploration and expeditions and what else can we be. So I think it kind of stems from there, and of course my fascination for science and technology. So all that combined, kind of, I think this was meant to happen.
Yeah, I was wondering what you really think about how films are made in India, because when you look at all the recent films, even in Hollywood, for example, Martian or Gravity or something like that, and even back in the days with Star Trek and so on. So there is always this filmmaking in the final frontier as a theme in the West quite a lot. And in fact, one of the earliest films with related to space was made here in Germany, where I live, for example. And it was a film called Frau im Mond, like women on the moon. And they imagined this rocket carrying a woman who was alone and going to the moon. And so that was almost 100 years, more than 100 years ago. So but then we haven't seen such so many films around the theme of space. I mean, of course, they had this Hrithik Roshan featuring character, the which Jadoo, and but that's not really a very space centric movie, right? So why do you think, in Indian movie making, in mainstream Bollywood, or even local regional cinema, space has never featured as a part of our themes?
Films survive on their ability to hold the audience's attention, right? So, and what holds our attention is something that we typically associate with, or we agree or have experienced. So, stories, mundane stories like a boy meets girl, and parents refusing the marriage, or bad cops, corrupt politicians, murderers, money laundering, etc., etc. These things we hear and see every day around us. So stories woven around such topics, I feel, are easily believable, as opposed to, say, a drama exploring the personal dynamics of astronauts on a long journey to Mars. So, and given India's population and how we are in each other's business, it's easy and kind of rewarding to tell a story of everyday life, I feel. And so these mundane stories told in an entertaining way is an easy hook for producers and filmmakers to grab the audience. And I think that's what has happened over time. And it's a tried and tested template. So, and why would you diverge from it, right? And secondly, coming back to the believability and grabbing the audience attention, it's resource intensive to create believable visual effects, and that kind of helps you suspend your disbelief. And the know-how, and the more importantly, the sensibilities for such sci-fi concepts has been missing in the Indian cinema industry, I feel. Because we are very good with human emotions and nuances, and we depict that faultlessly to a T. But when it comes to sensibilities, I think we lack the thought, where science, technology, and modern thought come together to create something amazing, epic, as a Gravity, or Inception, or what you just mentioned. And also, coming, when you say Hollywood, the West, they've had plenty of time, I feel, and money to make amazing, mind-blowing sci-fi stories and concepts. And then the availability of capital. And also, I think one important thing is that they have fair pay scales, which attracts great talent to Hollywood. And also Hollywood has created impossible to reach sci-fi films that makes your mind bend. You're thinking of even attempting such an endeavor, it's really prohibiting for a regional or Bollywood cinema space. And also, I think another thing to note on our culture, the Indian culture, is that we don't support filmmaking as a profession. Most parents still hate if their kids want to pursue the arts, right? They still make every effort to persuade the kid into taking up the proven fields such as engineering, finance, or medicine and things like that. So I think this systematically has lessened the talent pool available for the film industry. And I think the movers and shakers in the industry today are either connected because of this been filmmaking has been in their family, or there are some rebellious people who've gone through the struggles, dropped out of college, grown up in the ranks of traditional studio system to what they are today. So I feel what this has done overall is to throttle fresh ideas and perspectives into the industry. Without which high concept genres like science fiction, it's very hard to come by. So, you I guess you need a certain modernization to your sensibilities and a knowledge of science and tech to attempt a realistic, appealing sci-fi story. I feel so. I think that's why combine all of this. It has resulted in very few such high concept sci-fi films in India.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I also was thinking about it, and I thought, one of the interesting bits here is also about, what goes on into filmmaking is also the content and where the content comes from, right? Because if you look at many of the stories, even as recently as The Martian, it's written by an author who's done a tremendous amount of background into what goes on into building a Martian ecosystem and how astronauts can build it, and essentially the filmmakers have based their entire the storyline and then the screenplay and many other things adapted from the book itself. So there's two groups of people who I would say are contributing to the filmmaking in terms of the space storylines, where you have a writer who's very well researched and established the theme of the story and has done really a lot of research into the topic itself, and then filmmakers are taking that and creating having characters built around it and artists and having effects on top of that, right? So do you think that's where we're also lacking a bit, because essentially you need authors as well?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So filmmaking is a multidisciplinary effort, and also the deficiencies that you talk about is, I think, is more of a systemic thing. The audiences have been fed a particular ethos for a long, long time, and it's hard to get this big ship to change course. And the producers, where the money is, which kind of kickstarts everything, are kind of wary of stepping away from the tried and tested methods. And also one big thing is, and you would agree to this, is that we Indians are extremely risk averse. So taking a huge monetary bet on a Martian or a gravity kind of film it's next to impossible. And so, but I feel we slowly need to build brick by brick that leads up to this epic sci-fi films, what you see in the West, and we need to start creating little interesting sci-fi stories in an Indian context, and I think it's a two-pronged effort wherein you slowly build your audience base also, and they need to be sensible also to accept such a film, as you say. And at the end of the day, when you start doing this, I think the smaller films, the building of the foundation for sci-fi in India, over time, I think if the big studios and where the money bags are, if they see good returns on investment, and that's where things grow. That's where big epics happen, when there's good returns on the bets. But I think I'm really excited to start on this journey. Hoping a few years from now there'll be investors wanting me to make a Gravity or a Martian, or say better yet, Star Wars Princess Padme's Indian backstory. So that's I think that's from a producer's point of view in terms of the deficiency that exists, and deficiency from the other side, from the filmmaker's end or from the technician's end. I think there's plenty of talent in India, and but I think what we lack are good leaders, that can bring those talent together and provide the right direction to create an amazing work of art. Um, Filmmakers need to have that, like I said, the modern sensibility, and educated and nerdy enough to keep the physics right of the science fiction, and to build something that holds good for a global discerning audience, I feel. And like I said, it's multidisciplinary, like you said, of making a sci-fi film. So the experience that people bring into such a film is they need to be not just amazing in the art of filmmaking, but also say have a background of technology, architecture, or engineering, or some such things to kind of bring a wholesome experience and to make that nuanced tweaks and sensibilities that that people catch on to, that kind of elevates the cinema hundredfold when you get the science right, the physics right, and I think that's where we've lacked so far in the Indian film industry, because we kind of take the audience for granted, say, hey, they're not going to care about this. So we make this quick fixes and get to the end point without caring for the details of the science. So I think that's where we're losing out, and that's where the film falls short as compared to a Western cinema that's based on a lot of research, a lot of detail, a lot of hard work, and I think we have tremendous writers also in India who are writing great stuff, great sci-fi stuff. Again, it's just a matter of building the audience little by little, because writing something on a book and the imagination is wild. You can think of amazing concepts and amazing visual space when you read something on a book, but to translate that, it takes a hell lot of resources. So again, it comes back to convincing the big studios that there is money there is a good rate of return, and for that we need to prep the audience. So I think this is a great start, and I feel and what you're doing with your NewSpace India also is pretty cool, because eventually we are building that audience base who are interested in space stuff, stories, technology, and innovation, and so I think it's all coming together well. So I hope that answers.
When you look at the current trends of filmmaking, one thing that comes to my mind recently is this attempt by Akshay Kumar to portray the whole, I think, the Mangalyaan story, right? I'm not sure you watched it.
I did.
Okay, so do you think those are the kind of attempts that are the early starters of making this audience prepared? Because essentially, people have witnessed that, and millions of people have know that ISRO flew to Mars and was successful for the first time, and that kind of character building based on the trends that have already happened in the country. That kind of puts a foundation for all of this.
Yeah, certainly. I watched the movie. I loved it. But you have to watch it with an Indian perspective, right? Because a lot of melodrama, which I agree that is needed to to grab the attention of a larger base of audience. And but what that does is that it helps the producer recover his investment when you put those melodramas in, when you put the songs in, and stuff like that. So I think the Mangalyaan, the Mission Mongol film was very well made in terms of kind of including the science part into a realistic story I was told. And I think, yeah, that hopefully will spark a lot of imagination, a lot of films wherein we explore such concepts.
Yeah, and I think from what I read recently, there's also a few films that are up and coming. One, I think there was some rumors on Priyanka Chopra doing, I think, a character of Kalpana Chawla in a movie, and I think Madhavan is doing one of the characters from this scientist who was taken on for the spy case, and ultimately was proven that he was not a spy. And so I think there's a few movies that are up and coming that that are setting the tone in the society.
Right, right. And I think it's that those are more of science-based movies and not necessarily science fiction, I feel, right? Because you're depicting what has happened, and not what can be with the science. So I think again, we need all sorts of sciencey films to lift this whole big to steer the ship towards different kind of storytelling. So I think yeah, these are all very interesting stuff, and also you grow your technician base, you grow your the actors get acclimatized to science, and that's something that I also had an issue, or it was hard to convince my actors to say the sciencey lines in the film, and they were uncomfortable because so I had to explain to them what it was, etc., etc. Stuff like that. So I think we build the platform slowly with all these kinds of films, and yeah, it's a great thing. I'm so happy and so glad that it's all we're exploring this kind of filmmaking now.
Yeah, let's really talk about that. Then, it's interesting. I saw your trailer, Mysore Masala, and I really loved the trailer. It's kind of catching. It's something that I really am looking forward to watching. When I'm in India for the during the time of the release. So, tell us a little bit about the Mysore Masala and what it is about.
Well, so firstly, it was a little teaser. The trailer is not out yet. It's a small little teaser, a raw teaser that too at it, where we released immediately after the shoot. Um, so to talk about Mysore Masala as such, the intention, my intention was to build a visual platform, on which we can create stories that kind of lets us explore science and technology, intertwined with fiction, adventure, and fantasy. So the first film is the UFO Incident. It's the first brick in the foundation. The premise of which is what happens if an unidentified flying object, a UFO, crashes in India as opposed to crashing in the West always, right? So that's the premise of the film, this first film, and like I mentioned, this is a very small first brick in the foundation. It's an experimental seed almost, with a very minuscule budget. So, but I'm really proud that we've managed to achieve this film in almost one third or one fourth of what it would take to make it elsewhere. So, and we've created the designs of the spaceship, the launch metrics, etc., in house, and that's something that is that people don't take the effort to do these days. You just grab a template from the internet and modify it and just put it in your pipeline of visual effects. So to touch upon the story briefly without giving much away, it's about an Indian American who comes to India to live with his rocket scientist girlfriend. And the story kicks off when he witnesses what he thinks is as a UFO that abducts his girlfriend. And being a fish out of water and alien to the land, pun intended, he kind of has to navigate the police and the skirmish that kind of results from it, right? The police, of course, are understandably wary of such an otherworldly complaint, and they feel that there's something fishy about him because he's talking about a UFO abducting his girlfriend. So with no help, and kind of he takes matters into his own hands to find his girlfriend. And then along the way, he kind of bumps into a retired journalist, science journalist, who has some insight, who he finds has some kind of insight into this whole UFO thing that has been happening around that area. So it's I've had a lot of fun kind of exploring and building this story. So and then when you crash a UFO in India, there's so many possibilities that can happen, and there's so many different ways the stories can go. So it's been a lot of fun making it, and I guess I think as a team we came together really well, and we've managed to tell a very interesting story for this first film, and and the platform that I've set up has the capability to kind of scale into sequels, web series, and offshoot films, and it can truly grow into a cinematic world, I feel, over the next decade or so. And that's the idea, to set up a growing platform, and fingers crossed, and hopefully it gets the visibility that it deserves and the backing to grow into something truly game changing in this genre. And I guess that's all. That's how much I can go into the film. I think I've divulged a lot more than what people know.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about this geography difference that you have, because essentially you said you were in the U.S., or you are in the U.S. for the last almost 20 years now, and you are trying to connect to artists who are primarily based in India, in Bangalore or around in Karnataka, and shooting this film in Canada. And was there a lot of problems, because you're not local to India, have not been living there for couple of decades? Was it difficult to, how difficult was it to connect to the to technicians, to crew, to artists and all the others?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, Narayan, and it kind of brings back so many memories and so many ups and downs over the past 3 year, 3.5 years. It's amazing. I get nostalgic when I think about it. Uh, but yeah, like they say, the universe conspires to make your dreams come true. I would surely attest to that. But also, I'd like to add to that saying and mention that dreams don't do shit, right? Taking action on your dreams is what helps you go someplace or be someone or achieve your goal. And I think the universe also was waiting on me to take action for a long time. And when I quit my job and said, okay, I'm going to do this, and I went to India, is when the universe started turning its engines to collude with me on this action. So it all started with my action to put things in motion. That was that was about four years ago, I think, when I wrote the story of this film. I think it was sometime early 2015, and from there onwards, it's kind of been an obsession for me. And because it's this concept of creating something from scratch, creating something that doesn't exist. It's almost a craving, almost a high when you want to create something. And I think that's also a driving factor behind what I'm doing. Um, and over the past 3 4 years, I've made so many trips to India. I know that then I can count. But each time I visited India, and I know serendipitously or coincidentally or again the universe colluding or something, I met very interesting people, and they knew somebody who knew somebody else. And over time, I built that network in the industry, got to talk to technicians, got to go to small little workshops here and there, meet people in the industry, talk to actors. And so over time, I think I built my network slowly. And also, I think what helped was, since I was a producer, uh, uh, people gave more attention, because you're the key to a pot of money, and that always drives things quicker than saying, hey, I have a story, why don't you invest, and stuff like that. Which is also another side of the coin that I've done over over the past 4 years, is raise money for this sci-fi film. And that's a completely separate story. And I've barked so many trees, wrong trees, right trees, etc. But finally, I think I got a good set of investors who believed in me, believed in the story, and it came together. But what kind of the inflection point I feel to my efforts was when Anantnag signed up to be on the film. Uh, for all the listeners, and the Anantnag is like the Amitabh Bachchan of Karnataka, right? And he's an amazing person. So I feel him coming on board brought trust in the story that I wanted to tell, because he's very picky with his films. He does a couple of films in a year, and he reads the story, he takes his time. If he likes it, he does it, or else he just refuses. And all the films that he's done so far have been accepted, and have done really well. So there is some sort of trust in his judgment on a story. So when he said, "Okay, I'm going to do this, Ajay," I think it's really great. So that's when things started, snowballing. So And then Prakash Balwadi was another huge name in the industry that came on board. And like I said, I had written the story in English with Kannada sprinkled here and there. And I wanted the script to be translated to Kannada and dialogues rewritten in Kannada, because my vocabulary of Kannada isn't kind of it's good, but it isn't film worthy, even though it's my mother tongue. So I approached Prakash Belavadi to kind of take a look at the story, to write the dialogues in Kannada, because he's really good at it. Fortunately, Prakash liked the story, and he took so much interest that he said, "Hey, I'm going to rewrite the screenplay for you." And he kind of read through my screenplay, and this was my first feature length screenplay. So I think he saw some places where there could be improvement. So he said, "Hey, let me rewrite the whole screenplay." And I was like, "Okay, great, let's do it." And then now that's another thing. I feel that I've been very open to whatever the universe has thrown at me, and with fair judgment, of course. So my vision from the start to what it is today has changed. But the story remains the same. But the way it is told has changed over time by so many people. The technicians, Prakash, who rewrote the screenplay, the actors, and it's part of the process of filmmaking, I feel. And I've kind of accepted those changes, and the resulting screenplay is what became the movie. Um, since this was my first time making a feature length film, and that too with like stalwarts like Anant Nag and Prakash Belwadi, I had to have a strong enough support team that could, handle and execute to an industry standard and exceed it even. So, and that's what makes or breaks a film, right? The caliber of the team that puts the film together. So, and also any founder, this is not just for filmmaking, but and also in startups. Any founder in any field would agree about this, that partnering with the right people is probably the hardest, and you're going primarily by your instinct and their reputation in the industry. But unlike when you're building a tech product where you can let go an employee if they're not a good fit, you're right. But in my case in filmmaking, you don't know until D-Day if that person is good at how they will perform. So, and with a really small budget, we had one shot to build the product, right? 20 days is what we had the time to shoot. But I think we executed it well, and we didn't have any time to reshoot. So whoever I had with me, whatever equipment we had, whatever things we had planned, it was one shot, 20 days straight, bam, 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 done, right? For this grand vision. But I think we did well. I think we've told a very interesting story, and now we are in post production, which is another beast that I've been wrangling since a year and a half, because of so much sci-fi and so much design that is involved. So I think that's the journey that, in short, that I've had, Narayan, over the past 3-4 years.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. Essentially, I mean, I never thought of it this way, but essentially, it is very similar to a startup, but you're, under a lot more risk than a normal startup, because you have a lot of moving pieces at the same time.
True, very true. Yeah, very true, very true.
Yeah, and one of the interesting bits, of course, as an Indian, is also the support from the family and everything. So, because you've spent 20 years working in a different industry, and switching over to filmmaking as a full-time career, how was the support with from your family and friends? And tell us a little bit about how you had to convince them, or how they supported your entire effort in the last 2-3 years.
Yeah, I mean, of course, that is huge. That right there is the most important thing I feel in anybody's career, is the support system around them, right? Uh, and I think my interest in the visual medium started way long back when I was doing a graduate degree in Arizona, like I said, in Tucson. I bought my first what was it? The first digital camera. It was in 2000, summer of 2000. It was a Canon S10, I remember, a clunky, big ass camera. It was, I think it was quite expensive too at that time. So I think that's where my interest with photography and short films and all that started. And I've always constantly had people around me looking back that supported me, said I was doing great, and they liked what I did. They liked the pictures that I took. They liked the short films I made. And when I got married, also my wife has been a darling. She supported me. Things when I did short films, she used to come hold the mic for me. She's she held reflectors for me. She's held the second camera and stuff like that. Even with her full time job, she's an engineer too. So I've had that support for a long time. I feel looking back, and it all has led to this. I feel, and also back home, making that's another reason I think I chose to make this film back in Bangalore. My family has been extremely supportive. My first circle, second circle, in fact, some of them even invested in the movie, believing in me. And also, like I said, the regional cinema space, it's a great place for incubation of new ideas, experimental films. And so I think having family and the support system there was incubation in its truest sense. So I think that's why I took up that film to experiment it in Bangalore, and that's how this has come about.
So traditionally, this kind of film, I would say, would catch on to, let's say, the urban Bangalore Kannadiga audience quite well, because this is some kind of a new attempt in filmmaking in local Kannada scene. But what do you expect in more of semi-urban, second and third tier cities, or even villages?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, actually. So you're talking about like the traditionally we bifurcated the audience into classes and the masses, right? So the people for the class audience, people say, okay, this is for the class audience, this is for the mass audience, and I think that bifurcation has kind of widened over time, with the classes really not enjoying the mass movies, and I don't know if it's vice versa. I don't know the insights into the whole distribution game, or the feedback from the distribution and things like that. So, and the population of India is so huge. Even tier one cities, if your film does well in even the tier one cities, I think it's a great win. So I really don't know. And anybody you talk to in the industry, they give you advice, and at the end of it, there's always a disclaimer that saying, "Hey, I really don't know." They give examples of films that are really crap that did really well, and really great films that didn't do any business. So you really don't know the psyche of the audience, or else this would have been a slam dunk on on in the business sector. Uh, so but I do hope that the interesting thing I want to tell you, something that happened. We set up a booth in the Comic Con event at Bangalore in 2018. The film was just done. I was really excited. Comic Con was happening. I said, "Hey, we're creating sci-fi stuff. Let's go out there. Let's put up a booth." So we had a booth, and there was Marvel, there was DC Comics, there's Avengers, there's Spider-Man, there's a Thor, there's a lot of things around, and we are in this little booth here saying Mysore Masala, the UFO incident, right, with our poster and that little teaser uh, that I had, and we were giving out flyers and stuff like that, posters and stuff like that. But we did see a lot of people come and appreciate what we are trying to do, and said we need such movies, we need local superheroes, we need people to explore science, this thing is really great what you're doing. And I saw people from tier 2 cities, from Dharwad, Mangalore, Udupi, and things like that, from Karnataka, come by and show interest in the film. And so, but these kids who came by were more in the science field, technology, animation, So they were predisposed, I feel, to liking such films. But that is huge because India is 70% under 40 years of age. That's a massive audience we have who, due to the internet spreading so widely, the mobile phones being available for so cheap, I think there's this proliferation of science and tech to tier 2 and tier 3 cities, and it has created that spark and that enthusiasm to explore. So I feel Mysore Masala, the UFO incident, I think if it's marketed right and distributed right, I think it'll do very well, not just in tier 1, but in tier 2 cities as well.
Right. So when is the release of the film, or can you talk about it as to when you want to, release the trailer and the film itself?
Well, the trailer is ready, so we took a lot of effort in putting the trailer together because the film is one thing. Putting a trailer is really hard, man. It's so hard to put the trailer together because you don't know what to leave out, what to include, what kind of messaging you want to send out with the trailer. So it's been fun. At the same time, it's been really stressful to put the trailer together. I think we've done a great job. So the trailer is ready, but I think we will release the trailer when we get to know the release date of the film. So I'm hoping, but we're still working on the visual effects. We're still working on the final background scores and the sound mixes, the sound folies and sound effects, etc. So all that will need to take a couple more months, I feel, to kind of come together for a final cut.
Right. So I will definitely include the link to the teaser in the show notes of this episode so that people can watch. Um, and so, how can the New Space India community help you? Is there any thing that we can participate in? Of course, we can. If you're doing a premiere or something, I'm happy to put out a link so that people can come and watch. And how can we participate?
Yeah, of course, man. That's amazing. That's very exciting. Which brings up, when you say space community, it brings up an interesting incident that happened on the Bangalore metro. I want to tell you this. I know I was traveling in the metro one of the days, and I usually keep to myself, but I'm kind of aware of my surroundings. And no, one day I was traveling, kind of mid to late 20s. Some guy got in, and I noticed he was wearing a T-shirt that had the film Interstellar spaceship. Those that they call it the Endurance, where there are a couple of boxes and it's like a wheel, Ferris wheel, right? I don't know if you remember that. So he was wearing that T-shirt, and it was kind of very stylish, and the ship was placed very stylishly. And I casually made a remark about it, and he was very surprised. And he said that, hey, nobody had recognized the Endurance on my T-shirt before, and you recognized it. So, and then we ended up having a little chat about over that fictitious spaceship. And I found out he apparently worked as a hardware engineer, and he mentioned that he would love to watch my film, and he would love to get involved in the technology of the films. So, what I was trying to say is that as we start on this journey of kind of marrying science and fantasy, I think there'll be tremendous opportunities. A film is a lot of different disciplines coming together, especially a science fiction film, to tell a cohesive and engaging story. So, and such high concept genres as science fiction, like you mentioned before, will need very deep thought. And who better than the space community, right, to get involved? So for example, like I said before, I sat with my very talented designer and we ideated on what kind of spaceship would an alien civilization build, right? What shape would it be? What kind of material would it be used to build, right? Would they have engines? Or if so, what kind? What kind of propellant? And where would we put the thrusters, right? And what kind of shape for the thrusters would make sense for interstellar travel? So it's a very fun, thoughtful experimentation and experience to put a science fiction film together. And like I said, we also designed rocket launch metrics. But of course, we based it on our study of ISRO and NASA's launch screens. But we did put it together. We did say, okay, this if you're parking a geostationary satellite, so and how would Earth look from that point of view, right? How big or how small? So all these little nuances, little details go into making films happen. And also, one of the characters in my film is a rocket scientist, and she puts together a what I call a gravitational variance detection system, right? And I researched on this topic, and I created the design, which is based on real technology that exists today, which is the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. They call it the LIGO. I'm sure you know about it. And what it does is it detects faint gravitational ripples resulting from cosmic anomalies, and it's a few miles long. It's actually a physics experiment. It's a few miles long vacuum tube where lasers are shot and split at the end of it, and they bounce back. So the idea is that any gravitational ripple that, say, occurs from a black hole collapse or some mega cosmic event changes the interference pattern when the lasers are combined, when the two lasers come back, bounce back and combine at the end of it. So, and of course, I took some cinematic liberties in designing my own gravity detection system, of course, to fit the story I was telling. But what I'm trying to say is that science fiction films are a fertile ground for folks from the space community to, to get involved and have fun, and at the same time, not just fun, base it on real science, and make something fantastic out of it. But however, I would have to say that ultimately the storyteller has a final say in where the science ends and where the scientific fantasy begins, because at the end of it, it has to be an engaging story. So, and what I mentioned is just the tip of the iceberg. Take, for instance, designing a spacesuit for a character, right? How innovative and functional can we be, right? Cinema needs beautiful form for the suit, but the audience and the drama demands function out of it, right? So form and function comes together, and you can't have a extra large helmet with a huge visor. It just seems silly at this point in time. So, and also say sci-fi weapons if you need to design it, right? Sci-fi vehicles, sci-fi habitats. The list goes on, and just is as exciting as the imagination stretches. So I see a strong multidisciplinary need for people who can explore the fun that is science fiction, and I think we're at the start of something really big. And I'm always on the lookout for creative thinkers, to join us. So I think interesting people from the community can always reach out to me on any of my social media platforms. So yeah, it's a very exciting future looking ahead.
So Ajay, we've had a chat for almost an hour. I've taken a lot of your time. Thank you very much for coming on the show, and I would love to keep in touch with you as the film trailer and the film itself is then released. We would love to spread the message across the NewSpace India community. Happy to also help you connect with some of the folks from the ISRO management if that helps. And let us know how the community can help and how we can participate.
Most certainly, Narayan. This was great chatting, and I guess like I said, science fiction. The tribe of science fiction is the space community. So I would love to get involved with it, and I would love to partner with you all in exploring. And I think at the end of the day, we're all exploring, and we're all explorers. So let us explore.
Thank you for staying until the end. If you have any comments or suggestions, please write to curator@newspaceindia.com. Please consider sharing this episode with any friends or family who may be interested in learning about India's space activities. If you would like to stay in touch with the NewSpace India community, please use the link in the description to join the NewSpace India Telegram group. Feel free to also suggest guests for any future episodes. A new episode of the NewSpace India podcast is released every other Friday. Do subscribe to the podcast using Apple, Google, or any other podcasting platforms you may use. Until the next episode, thank you.